Have you ever hit your funny bone and felt that crazy tingling electric shock? Well, that is just a tiny glimpse into the absolutely brilliant network we're exploring today. Let's dive right into this explainer, where we're unpacking the ingenious clinical tools doctors are using to navigate and evaluate the hidden wiring of our peripheral nervous system. I mean, think of your body as this high-tech facility, right? Running miles of delicate, completely invisible wiring just beneath the surface. When surgeons need to operate, or when neurologists are trying to diagnose some mysterious numbness, they are essentially working in the dark. So today, we're looking at two fascinating areas of medical research that basically act as high-powered flashlights in that darkness.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're bridging two really compelling papers today, one on physical surgical protection and one on a diagnostic testing breakthrough. We'll start with the core challenge, step into ankle surgery's hidden minefield, figure out how to map the safe zones, dive into a major diagnostic dilemma, crack a mathematical code, and finally, look to the future of nerve care.
Section 1, the Peripheral Nerve Challenge.
Before we get to the solutions, we really need to grasp just how vulnerable this system actually is. Our peripheral nerves are these incredibly complex, hidden wires that transmit all our vital signals, everything from feeling a breeze to moving our fingers. But they face two massive, distinct threats. You've got physical injury, like a stray surgical scalpel, and then you have these insidious diseases that attack the nerves from the inside out. The crucial takeaway here is that to protect these delicate structures, modern medicine has had to invent some truly brilliant outside-of-the-box workarounds.
Which brings us to Section 2, ankle surgery's hidden minefield. Now, ankle arthroscopy is usually this super safe, minimally invasive procedure. But check out this staggering statistic. When complications do happen, nerve injuries account for 55.4% of them. Over half. That makes the surgical ankle an absolute minefield for orthopedic surgeons who are just trying to safely place their arthroscopic tools through the skin. So what are they hitting? Well, the most frequently injured nerves are the branches of the superficial peroneal nerve, or SPN, along with the sural and saphenous nerves. This happens in about 2.3% of all ankle arthroscopies. And you might be wondering, why is this so common? It's because human anatomy is wild. The pathways of these nerves are highly variable. They just don't run in the exact same place from person to person. A surgeon can't just memorize an anatomy textbook and guarantee they won't clip a nerve.
So how do they handle it? Let's look at Section 3, mapping the safe zones.
Traditionally, doctors have relied on a very specific physical maneuver to find the SPN before they even make a cut. Actually, you can try this right now. If you point your toes down hard, that's maximal plantar flexion, and then turn the sole of your foot inward, you are literally pulling that exact nerve tight. The idea is that this makes it pop up enough for the surgeon to see or feel it under the skin, draw a line with a marker, and basically say, okay, don't cut here.
But there's a huge catch, and it has to do with patient BMI. As a patient's body mass index goes up, visual identification literally falls off a cliff. The data shows that the odds of actually seeing that nerve drop by 32% for every single unit increase in BMI. Feeling for it drops by 17%. So for patients with a higher BMI just looking for or feeling the nerve, it's simply not a viable option.
And this is exactly where technology steps in to save the day. Look at this night and day comparison. When researchers tested high-frequency ultrasound against those traditional look and feel methods, ultrasound mapped up to 92% of the nerve's hidden pathway. The traditional method barely caught 33%. Ultrasound objectively maps out these safe zones, giving surgeons a crystal clear path to work with. And doctors aren't just stopping at ultrasound. They tested arthroscopic transillumination, which is basically shining a light from inside the joint to cast a shadow of the nerve, and that completely failed, 0 out of 53 cases. But then there's near-infrared light. Devices like the Vein Viewer use this brilliant bit of clinical misdirection. They don't even look for the nerve. They map the veins instead. Because nerves almost always travel right next to veins, if you avoid the vein, you avoid the invisible nerve right next to it. The result? 0 reported injuries. All right, moving on to Section 4, the diagnostic dilemma. So we've seen how to physically dodge nerves. But what if the threat is a hidden illness attacking from within? Enter an incredibly tricky category of diseases called non-length dependent neuropathies, or NLDN. This includes severe conditions like sensory neuronopathy. Spotting NLDN early is notoriously difficult because honestly, it completely breaks the rules of typical nerve damage. Let me explain why it's so tricky. Typical nerve damage, length-dependent neuropathy, follows a dying back pattern.
It hits the longest nerves first, meaning a patient feels numbness in their toes way before anywhere else. Standard diagnostic tests catch this easily. But NLDN, it goes rogue. It causes primary degeneration of sensory neurons and can actually strike the upper limbs and arms first, completely bypassing that usual feet-first pattern. Figuring this out requires some serious, systemic detective work before the damage becomes permanent.
Luckily, we have a solution, which brings us to Section 5, cracking the SARR code. Researchers in France basically found an elegant mathematical cheat code for this diagnostic nightmare. Electrophysiologists do these tests where they send tiny electrical pulses to see how well nerves fire. They measure the signal amplitude in the sural nerve down in the leg, in the radial nerve up in the arm. The big breakthrough? Creating a ratio, the sural/radial amplitude ratio, or SRAR. By just dividing the leg signal by the arm signal, they found a massive disparity. Standard neuropathy patients sat at a median ratio of 0.17, but those sneaky NLDN patients, they spiked to a massive 0.74. If you look at the ROC curve mapped here, which is basically a chart grading how accurate a medical test is, that red line pushing hard into the top left corner is exactly what you want to see. It represents an area under the curve of 0.94. In plain English, this simple math equation scores a near-perfect A+ in telling these diseases apart. It proves this simple ratio is unbelievably accurate. And out of all that statistical modeling, they isolated one golden number, 0.33. This is the optimal threshold to crack the mystery. Here's what that threshold means in the real world for a clinician. If a patient's SAR calculation comes back higher than 0.33, it flags this severe NLDN with roughly 85% accuracy. Even better, it has a negative predictive value of almost 97%, meaning if the number is low, doctors can safely rule the disease out. It's an absolute game changer because it catches early-stage disease that standard criteria would completely miss, letting doctors start targeted treatments way sooner. Let's bring it all home in Section 6, the future of nerve care. The biggest takeaway from this explainer is simply this: precision prevents paralysis. Whether we're talking about dodging a surgeon's scalpel with an ultrasound probe or diagnosing a silent immune disease with a 0.33 ratio, identifying these hidden wires early is literally the difference between a full recovery and a lifetime of irreversible disability. So I'll leave you with this final thought. The peripheral nervous system has pretty much always been this dark, hidden maze for medicine. But as our technological toolkits evolve with high-frequency ultrasound, near-infrared light, and brilliant data modeling, are we finally entering an era of zero misdiagnoses and zero surgical injuries? It really feels like someone just flipped the lights on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning and stay curious.